Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to speak to you today about the NHRC India. I'm not sure how far the NHRC can contribute to the implementation of these guidelines, since its main mandate is really the redressal of complaints. But the NHRC can certainly become a valuable ally in addressing the various human rights challenges that the SSF community. The first is the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the Forced Labor Convention, Equal Remuneration Convention, Abolition of Forced Labor, and the Discrimination, Employment and Occupation Convention. Most of these conventions recognize important rights, including the right to life, equality, freedom of expression, education, health, habilitation, rehabilitation, work and employment, social protection, and an adequate standard of living, which I think all of these apply to the SSF communities in equal measure. Very quickly, I'd like to highlight for you the mandate of the NHRC as provided under the Protection of Human Rights Act 1993, particularly Section 12. The Commission has the power to inquire suo motu or on a petition presented by victims or persons on their behalf or on the direction of any court into complaints of A, violation of human rights or abetment, B, negligence or dereliction of duties in the prevention of such violations by public servants. Secondly, it can intervene in any proceedings concerning human rights pending before courts with the approval of such courts, of course. It can visit any prisons or other institutions where persons are detained to study the living conditions of the inmates and make recommendations. It can review the safeguards provided by or under the Constitution or any law for the protection of human rights and recommend measures for their effective implementation. It can study international treaties and other instruments on human rights and make recommendations to the government for their effective implementation. It is also mandated to spread human rights awareness among various sections of society through publications, the media, seminars, and other available means. It also undertakes and promotes research in the field of human rights. And it is also mandated to encourage the efforts of NGOs and institutions and civil society working in the field of human rights. First, as I had mentioned, complaint redressal and investigation are major functions of the Commission. A complaint can be made in any language recognized by the Constitution, either by the victim or any other person on behalf of the victim, or on a direction or order of any court. The NHRC also takes suo motu cognizance, as I had mentioned, of serious matters on the basis of media reports. All complaints are placed before the Commission for disposal, and if any complaint requires further investigation, the same is carried out through its investigation division. It is in the discharge of this particular mandate that the NHRC has received as well as taken suo motu cognizance of over 350 cases relating to individual fish workers and the fishing communities, ranging from fishermen languishing in prisons in Pakistan to the forcible eviction of fishermen, women, and their families. And more details of these cases are available on the NHRC website, so if any of you are interested, I think you should look those up. The other thing which Sebastian had asked me to highlight is while the Protection of Human Rights Act, while it provides for inquiring into individual complaints, are there any examples of the NHRC having taken cognizance of or having intervened to protect collective rights of fishing communities? As far as fishing communities go, I think the most recent intervention has been in the case of the Loktak Lake in Manipur, which was mentioned at quite some detail yesterday. But apart from that, when I had checked with the law division, there were no such other examples of collective rights of fishing communities. However, I would like to highlight just a few examples where the NHRC in fact has intervened to look at collective rights of people. I'd like to mention to you the case of POSCO. The state of Odisha had signed an MOU with POSCO in June 2005. And for this purpose, the government had leased out government land, including forest and private land, in contiguous Gram Panchayats, of Dhinkia, Nuagaon, and Gada Kujang. And in 2011, the Ministry of Environment and Forests accorded final clearance to the project, accepting the claim of the state government that there were no tribals residing in the proposed project area. Despite Gram Sabha resolutions opposing the project, these were declared invalid by the state government, and so the proposal was finally cleared. And a sort of aggressive conflict, law and order situation emerged, especially between those who were in favor of the project and those opposing the project. And so this complaint was received by the NHRC, and the NHRC deputed its special rapporteur to visit the area and to submit his report. And the report of the special rapporteur concluded that there was both documentary and oral evidence that corroborated the presence of forest-dwelling scheduled tribes in the project area, conflicting the claim of the state government. There were also allegations of no compensation having been paid to those employed in the beetle vines. Compensation had only been given to the owners. No compensation had been provided to the agricultural laborers, sharecroppers, etc. And subsequently, another team of the NHRC, headed by one of its members, visited the site. It came to light then that those who had been dispossessed, displaced from their lands, the state government was now indirectly trying to acquire land for resettling these people. And the way it was doing it was not directly by acquiring land, but through two private parties who were buying land on the pretext of development of community resources like fish farms. So essentially tricking people into selling off their lands at very low prices. You're more than welcome to see if that can be of any use to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So the Commission brought this to the notice of the Chief Secretary, who then stepped in to give directions to halt using private parties to acquire land by subterfuge. And he ordered that if the land had been bought at prices lower than those now agreed for the POSCO project, the former owners should be paid these higher prices, these higher rates. And the Commission has also stepped in and asked the state government to revise its stand that there were no scheduled tribes in the proposed project area, and to give them redress accordingly. And of course, the case is still open, and the NHRC continues to be engaged with the state government on the same. So a lot of the times the state government is very reluctant to provide requisite information. Thereby, this case has been prolonged for a long time. Apart from POSCO, the NHRC has also intervened in a similar case with respect to Tata, which also in Odisha had acquired land for a power project, for a steel project, which eventually after a long time did not materialize, and the plan to set up the steel project was finally scrapped. And in the process, many people had already been displaced. They were not provided jobs, they were not resettled, and the NHRC again intervened in this, and the case is still ongoing. Just two other examples which I'd like to highlight regarding the protection of collective rights and where the NHRC has intervened. The first relates to this problem of silicosis.
In brief, in brief. Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry. So silicosis is basically a lung disorder which is caused by inhalation of crystalline silica, and exposure to this occurs during mining, stone crushing, quarrying, etc. So the NHRC has again intervened in this case, taking the plea that the right to life, the right to health of these workers has been affected. And in another case regarding the spraying of endosulfan, which I'm sure most of you are aware of, which is an agrochemical which was being sprayed in cashew nut plantations across the Kasargod district in Kerala. And the NHRC finally intervened because there were widespread allegations of several central nervous system disorders, neurological disorders, cancers, body deformations, etc. So these are just some of the examples where the NHRC has intervened to protect collective rights. And so my suggestion really to the ICSF and all those who are present here would be that the NHRC can, definitely work towards protecting the rights of marginalized communities like the small-scale fishers. And the key way to do it is to really send your complaints to the NHRC, because that is the way it operates. And your complaints have to be as specific as possible to say what exactly is the rights violation that you're complaining about. The other thing that I have heard over the last 2 days is the fact that most of these communities are impoverished, and they don't have access to things like healthcare, education, pensions, insurance, etc. And the NHRC has very recently started to monitor the socio-economic central flagship programs of the government of India, including the midday meal scheme, the ICDS, which is basically looking at Anganwadi centers, the Rural Health Mission, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, Indira Awas Yojana, and the NHRC visits various districts across the country to look at the implementation of these programs. And based on its spot field visits, it also sends recommendations to the respective states for implementation. So I would urge you to bring these issues to the notice of the NHRC as well, so that it can act based on these, these complaints or, yeah. I also heard a couple of speakers, I'll just finish, speak about human rights defenders and how they are increasingly under attack by state authorities in collusion with other players. And the NHRC has recently appointed, not recently, as far back as 2009, a focal point on human rights defenders. So if you like, there are details available on the NHRC. You're more than welcome to see if that can be of any use to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.